Yeah, I want to welcome everybody to another edition of Truth Seekers. Coach Nick is still on baby watch, so we have Coach Jon joining us today. Jon, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And we have Marco joining us today, and I see his screen name is Marcus Aurelius. So welcome, Marco, and would love to hear the story around Marcus Aurelius.
Yes, my podcast. I thank you again for having me on, Josh, and nice to meet you, Jon. Thanks for filling in over here for heavy and light duties. My podcast is the Special Sauce Podcast, and my host name is Marcus Aurelius. So I go by Marcus Aurelius. Odd story about that is on my birth certificate, it's actually Marcus Aurelius. But I've always gone with Marco Capaldi because there were less butt kickings, I guess, in an all-Italian Providence neighborhood with Marco Capaldi, which happens to be my grandfather's name. So it's Marcus Aurelius Capaldi. But I've always actually in my grades, even my Scott, all my stuff, all my medals, anything I've ever done, my degrees and everything is say Marco Capaldi, but it's actually Marcus Aurelius. So yeah.
Very interesting. And Special Sauce Podcast, tell us about that if you would.
Sure. So Italian tongue in cheek, right? Special sauce. Everybody's got their sauce recipe secret, right? So my background, I was a investment banker for many years. So I helped actually raise money for startups. And in 2012, I had a really successful money management practice that came out of my investment banking activities. And I sold the practice and I went after investment banking primarily. And I was in the REIT space. So you can imagine what happened in the real estate market the few years after I did that. So my timing wasn't perfect, but what are you going to do? So I actually went through a period where I reinvented myself and I became more of a coach and more of a strategic partner for organizations. And I've actually held contracts as a director of programs for the SBA, which they have a veteran program called the VBOC. So I was most recently the director of the New England program for the SBA's veteran program. And prior to that, I was the director of a program that helped veterans with their financial resilience. So I'm very much involved in financial education, literacy, and helping people. So I've always owned an insurance agency. That's kind of been my other side thing. So you'll find with me, they all kind of intersect in the same areas, but I took that old approach of owning things that vertically touch. So, I kind of like that I can vertically utilize services in the same realm with the same clients. So my insurance firm now, I've kind of taken a step away from the other stuff. I'm focused now and Josh and I had a good conversation about this actually. I'm focused more on mentoring recent veterans and other folks to join the financial services business.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
How long have you been focused on that?
So it's been about a year of truly focusing on the agency's growth, but the insurance part and that stuff has been going on for like 20 years. So I've really kind of taken the reins of growing this agency in an amazing way. So I kind of look at the core of people and we're doing more of a educate, train them and help them lead kind of approach. So we're creating independent leaders within one organization. How about that?
That's great. Kudos to you.
Thank you. It's you kind of feel like Phil Jackson sometimes where you sit there and you're like, man, all this drama and these folks can't hit free throws. But what are you going to do? You're gonna step outside yourself sometimes and just help people understand things on their terms. That's one of the keys, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That resonates a lot with us, Jon, right? As coaches, I
love the Phil Jackson analogy because he's one of my favorite coaches.
Oh, he's an amazing coach. Look at the personalities he had to manage. I mean, how do you manage those personalities and get, championships consistently get championships out of prima donnas? So, on paper, there's always these sports teams. It's easy to pick on sports teams because they're very visible. I mean, I love sports, but No analogies, I promise. I won't bore your audience with any sports analogies. But I will say one thing. It's very easy to pick on prima donna athletes, but it's another thing to really understand how much pressure they're under to perform consistently. It's consistency in sports is a little bit more of an element because the physical part comes into play. I can literally get away with talking a lot in my business. I can get away with asking the right questions. I can get away with my presenting skills, and just there's a lot of things. You can't hide on a basketball court. If that ball's not going in, somebody's going to be on you pretty quick. So they're at a different level than we are, but I appreciate it. So.
I do see some similar principles though in success, right, John? Just consistency over time yields results is one of the big rallying cries that we have at Pro Advisor Coach. Beginning with the end in mind, where do you want to go, and then being able to measure your activities over a period of time so that you can be held accountable for what you're growing. And sometimes that takes a little bit of tweaking along the way, because we don't, maybe the 16-foot jumper is not going to land you those threes behind the arc, but maybe you got to tweak that a little bit and ratchet that up in practice. So it's the same thing with business. Like, what are we growing here? How are we going to get there? And so that consistency rings true throughout a lot of things that we do in our professional and personal lives.
We kind of use that Daniel Pink mind set, where it's kind of left brain, right brain, and a little bit of Carol Dweck. I don't know if you read some of those books, but I kind of believe that we're very left brain in my business. So, whether it's a banker, financial advisor, everything's the facts. It's like, even like the accountability, we're not necessarily as sales focused as we are, coming back with fact finders, right? So, if you did a good job in our agency, you had 5 or 6 good fact finders, right? What does that mean? That means that you were able to understand from a client's perspective, their goals, what their assets are, where they're going, what are some of the things that are important to them. And then I think the next level advisor, someone who really takes their practice seriously, tries to understand like the next generation. And most of the planning that people do, they're thinking about generational wealth, or they're thinking about longevity. If I live long, and I treat my kids right, maybe they'll take care of me. Maybe they won't. Maybe I'll have a plan where I can independently take care of myself, right? And that's imagine that's a problem. That's a first world problem, right? We're living longer, right? And I don't think that third world, I feel terrible about that, but it's I don't think they're thinking about that. We have a different perspective in this, in this first world mentality. We want to get better. Why? We want more money. More money comes with a lot of things,
Right.
One thing I believe is serving others, so, I kind of equate having a good year with how many people I've served, so gratitude, all of that, all of that focus on material stuff. It can be bad energy, and financial advisors get a bad rep, right? Drive a nice car because it means, your clients look at nice suit, everything else, the tie. I lost the tie a while ago, but I couldn't get away with the Josh Greco beard. I don't know if I could pull it. I wanted to, I wanted to. I don't know if I could pull that off, but I'm sure you see this too. So my main categories of clients are business owners and people who are planning to retire. So I've made an interesting pivot. My podcast, when you listen to the first 10, 12 episodes, it's a lot of startups. So it's kind of the juice from the startups, what really got them to do well, and that's, what is your special sauce, right? So, we really played with that and understood it at a good level, but this COVID made a real serious change to startup business. And we were finding less and less folks that had the happy, smiley face that wanted to be on a podcast and talk about how it's going, so just innately, I knew that it wouldn't make for a good show, so I just kind of did some soul searching on what our next pivot would be. And we've kind of made it more folks that are in business, but are, passionate about it that were in the corporate world previously, or they're in the corporate world now and they want to pivot to a business kind of thing. So it's kind of, how do you carve out a successful retirement for yourself through your business, right? So retirement is a lot of the work I do in the insurance agency. We do a ton of, retirement income planning. We do a lot of things of that sort. So it kind of fits hand in hand. And I didn't have to go too far to find good examples. We had our clients that we could tap on. And believe me, when we offered to clients, hey, would you like to be on a podcast? They're like, hey, that sounds, it sounds great. So we got a great response from that. It's funny. We don't have many shy clients. There's not many wallflowers. Now there's like a little list. There's a little running list of who wants to be on the show, but that's a good problem to have, I guess. But
I think it takes a special person to be a business owner. You got to be bold, right? But
yeah, you do. Someone's got to sell something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, selling's not a dirty word, I know that the millennial crowd, nobody wants to sell, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things are just going to be bought. I mean, it happens on Amazon, but then you're talking about price. It's like, then you're competing on price, and then that never gets to be a good business. That's more of a one-off. Like if you watch Shark Tank, anything that's based on price is commoditized pretty quick.
Yeah. I was going to say one thing that resonated with me, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this, John, too, is and it sounds like you're in this space where, you make tweaks along the way to find out what your special sauce is, right? And to me, what that is something unique that you provide to other people that nobody else can give because it's unique to you. And I know, John, you work with a lot of clients like that, right? Talk to me.
Yeah. So a couple of things that you've said, Marco, that resonate with me is I work with a lot of financial advisors. And what I've noticed is they have a lot of people that are like you are focusing on retirement. But how many of those clients actually know what that vision is of retirement that excites them, that gets them like waking up in the morning energized? Or is it just a dream of, oh, one day I'm going to stop working? Because no one wants that. They might think they want to take a break from the action, but in reality, what they really want is something they can do well into their 70s and still be working, but maybe have a lifestyle that they don't have now.
Yeah, I like to call it, there's a idealist view of the entrepreneur's life. It's like, I love the memes out there about what, being an entrepreneur is. Google them when you get a chance. They're hilarious because, there's always the view from the outside of how sexy it is to be an entrepreneur. And then there's the actuality. If you're coming from a corporate world, you're maybe going in from 8:30 to 5 p.m., every day. Whereas, an entrepreneur's day is like 5:30 a.m. till whatever. So
you go to sleep, right?
Yeah, 8, 9, 10 o'clock, So, ideally, I've got to tell you, even the businesses that look like they'd be ideal and appealing, like I'll give you a good example. I have a couple that wanted to own a bed and breakfast out in the Cape. So, Cape Cod for all, I know this is a national program. So Cape Cod, Massachusetts, like a retiree capital of the world, right? So you go there and, they get into this business. They had enough money to buy the house. They had everything planned. The doilies were placed and the place looked very nice, and they actually marketed it well. So they got good turnover. But about their second year in, they were sick of people knocking on their bedroom door with issues. Yeah. So their own relationship took a hit because they had never figured out that they're always on the spot, and the business didn't generate enough income to really hire that person that could be the overnight buffer. So these are some of the things that a good advisor can figure out, and I don't want to say steer you clear of, but give you a perspective on what would be an easier turnkey type business. So franchises have this model down. There's a lot of franchises that are owner optional. So, you basically can, start up the formula runs itself. Hire a manager. Maybe you work at the business for a year, and then it's optional whether you show up, right? So if you want a work-life balance and lifestyle, that may be a better consideration for most people. Do they get there? Maybe not, because buying a franchise scares some people. It should, because there's a lot that wouldn't work out, but there's a few that do work in that market space. So that's in the planning stages, it's good to actually ask introspective questions of everyone involved. That's another thing too. I think family businesses, people are always under the impression that their family is going to help out more than they actually can. They never bother to ask, and then they get into the business, and the business drives a wedge between families. That's the other part too. I find that a lot. One of the other things too is health insurance is a big concern for folks out there. If you work in the corporate world, having a partner that's still working that has health insurance helps more businesses launch than anything I can name. There's no better stimulus than having a spouse or someone who can carry you on their health insurance. So I don't know if you guys are in that. You both in that boat? Do you have, or are you buying your own health insurance? That's my agents are standing by. They're listening.
Speaking of selling.
So yeah, that's a concern though. That's yeah.
It is. Yeah. So I have a question for you about the veterans and teaching them to become leaders. Do you have actually a curriculum for that? How do you go about that?
Yes, actually, I am very excited to tell you that I was involved with a program. It's a great program. I still recommend it highly, called Boots to Business. So Boots to Business has been delivered, I think the number was like to 3 million veterans in the last 10 years. So
Wow.
very big program, and it's done often on the bases. So a lot of like the education I did was on Hanscom Air Force Base and some of the other bases around the country. So that's one part, is that there is a program. There's also, I'm going to give my friend a good shout out. I have a friend named Leland Goldberg, who was and I mentioned to Josh, I still have to introduce you to Leland. Leland and you have assessments in common. So you both use assessments as part of your coaching, which is an excellent thing to do. So Leland Goldberg has started what's called Veteran, vetrn.org. If you're a veteran out there and you want to connect, if you've got 100,000 in sales is the only qualifier. So for someone who's been in business that has at least 100,000 in sales, you can actually get what they call a Streetwise MBA through them. And the curriculum is actually created by one of the best organizations for business startup in the country. So it's a free veteran MBA, and it's a 16-week Saturday program that has mentorship also. So there's bankers, lawyers, CPAs in the community that give their time to help you figure out how to work your business right.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's a great program.
Awesome.
So,
Go ahead.
How many veterans do you have as financial advisors working?
So right now I have 2 that I'm mentoring and coaching. I had 3, but I had one gentleman who decided he got a government contract that was a little bit more lucrative and a little bit easier, and he took greener pastures, but that happens. So I have 2 actually, and I'm looking by the end of the year to grow it to 7.
Wow.
So, and we're in talks with a lot of folks now. So if someone's out there watching this that's a veteran that always wanted to get into the financial services business, this is a good opportunity to check in with me on. So,
Excellent.
but mentioning the assessments, it's funny. Josh, Coach Josh, actually went through this with me, and it really behooves me that there aren't assessments used in the school systems more than testing. I mean, testing is one thing, telling kids how well they memorize something for one stitch of time. I'm not really sure how that's going to help them in business and life and in understanding themselves. But I can tell you that assessments work. I mean, if there's I've always believed, like when you do a SWOT analysis, everyone wants to talk about making their weaknesses better. I'm not one of those people. I think if you've got strengths, hire your weaknesses. I
Yep.
teach people to write the job description for the stuff they hate the first day of their business. What do
Totally
you
agree.
hate? Do you hate bookkeeping? Okay. Do you hate marketing? Do you hate, what do you not like about doing in your business? Do you not want to clean your own toilets? Okay, great. Write those job descriptions early and then make the money to pay the people that fill in the roles. And that's really where, living on your strengths really helps. I think we waste a lot of time trying to make well-rounded people. I think that worked in classical education when you had, the sons of corporate titans learning Shakespeare. I love Shakespeare. Don't get me wrong. I've read plenty of it and been force feed Shakespeare, but I can tell you that it's not going to help you in the business world. I don't know. Do you guys agree? Did Othello?
I agree with what you're saying. I mean, you need to do what you enjoy.
Yeah.
And if you enjoy it, you're going to attract others who enjoy the same thing. It's kind of like the whole ideal client as a financial advisor. Who do you attract? You attract people like you that like the same kind of things you do.
God help me.
Isn't that true in your experience?
It is. And I try to find people that have a little bit more of the analytical. I've got more of the other skills that complement it well. So, more of a planner and, I try to find the complementary pairs out there. But you're right, actually. It's, we all come to this world with a certain amount of skills. You got to believe that you have some things that weren't taught that are innate. But I'm kind of the believer that you can be taught almost anything. I like that Tim Ferriss approach. You really only got to be 80% good at something to look like you're good at something. You know what I mean? It's like, there's a hack for everything, right? He learns how to play the guitar in like 10 days at a masterful level. I think when you put pressure on yourself, this is the problem people have with small business, is they'll try to actually start a business, but they'll never have a real set date on when they want to earn money, and never have a set date on when they want to hire their first person, and not have enough actual like dates that in their business planning that they have to achieve. I mean, there's a break-even analysis that's done. And that only means that your financials meet up to expectations. That doesn't necessarily mean that the business itself, is running itself like a business. People find themselves in elaborate jobs rather than owning a business. A business is, you can just take the weekend off, go to Newport Beach, right? This is a national audience, right? We'll pick someplace sexy. So we'll go to Newport Beach, California, not Newport, Rhode Island, where it's freezing right now. So you want to go to Newport Beach and go for a good 8 days, right? If you've got it figured out and it's a business, people will actually run it for you. And then the actual cash flow will probably reach you too. So, I mean, when you don't have it figured out, you're getting 20 calls a day and you're making decisions on which toilet paper and which way does the toilet paper roll out? You know what I mean? It's a terrible thing, but a lot of business owners in the early stages find themselves being Johnny on the spot for a very long time. And that's a terrible thing to have happen. I mean, I meet people that are 5 years in that have 10 employees that are still making all those decisions, and I can't figure out why. So,
well, I think this interweaves with a theme you mentioned earlier about assessment versus testing in school. To me, what speaks to me is awareness. Yeah. We want to become aware of what we're good at, because I think it took me at least, it probably took a lot of people, it takes a lot of people a long time to figure that out. And unless you're asked the right questions, that's kind of what that mind scan is about, Marco, what you said about, like, a lot of the questions are actually introspective. So I thought maybe, as we wrap up here, something that could be valuable to our viewers, potential clients of ours or people building their own businesses. What is one introspective question you would ask the audience to be reflective on to make sure that they're thinking about the right things when they approach their business or something that they're good at? Marco, if you don't mind starting.
Sure, and I'm going to make this a shameless plug in with the story. So the first thing is have an exit strategy. If you're lucky enough to go to business school and you find value in a business school, almost every MBA has kind of a clear understanding that every business has a cycle and it has a beginning and it has a clear end. A lot of people who start businesses don't really have a clear end. I'm working very closely with a very talented woman. She's on my next podcast. If you go to my podcast at specialsaucepodcast.com, you will hear a wonderful person named Michelle Seiler Tucker, who we've been doing some things with. She is a M&A specialist for a small business. For any size business. She's got some cases that are 70, $80 million sales. So she will actually value your business, understand who the potential buyers are, and give you kind of perspective on, do you have everything it takes to sell your business? People say to me all the time when they're planning their retirement, hey, my business is part of my retirement. And I look at them and I say, great. Here's a list of things you need in order to make it a saleable business. And then they look at me and they're like, you serious? Yes, dead serious. So, have policies and procedures, have a formula for your business, have a system, it sounds very basic, but there's a lot of steps that people forget, like have very clear job descriptions. It's great that you have one person that's tasked with 10 things. If that key person leaves you tomorrow, you don't have a business. So really having a clear exit strategy and understanding that the real value of the business goes beyond you, and that's the hard part with a lot of early entrepreneurs or even people that are in business 5-10 years, really don't have a clear perspective on knowing where the exits are. If you begin with the end in mind, that was an old Brian Tracy thing, or Brian Tracy, Psychology of Success. In his book, he said, picture yourself at your own funeral. What would you like said at your funeral? It's a very morbid thing to think about, but if you do more for your community, your family, if your people you mentor in your business admire you, then you're doing something well. I meet people all the time that they say to me, well, I trained my competitor. I'm like, that's actually a feather in your cap, because you actually didn't hold anything back. You trained someone so well that they actually understand it at a high level. You did something well, and karma all comes back to you. So I totally believe that. I'm happy to teach anybody anything. Whether they listen, that's another story.
Sure.
When they're paying me, that's different. They write everything down twice.
How about you, Coach Jon?
The question is, what would the one question be?
Yeah, something introspective that somebody can be self-reflective on to make sure that they're following the right path.
Yeah, I would just go back to what we touched on earlier, which is, what do you really enjoy? What gives you joy? And how do you provide structure in your life to make sure you're doing that? Mm. The more you can do that for yourself, the more you're going to attract others who share the same mindset. And that is, I agree with you, Marco, about the business, and the value of the business is the people and the processes that you put in place. And there's a great book called The E-Myth Revisited. Are you familiar with that?
Oh yeah, I remember the original E-Myth. I think I'm old.
Yeah, I read both, but it's a great book, and it really does talk to what you're talking about. Have the end in mind. And what do you want to do after you sell the business? And start working on that now.
That's powerful. And I was given some pretty good advice when I first started out coaching, was, when you're asked why you're doing something, ask why again another 5 times. So if it's like to make sales, why? To earn money, why? To be financially independent, why? And eventually you get down to the basic core of what motivates you and why you're doing what you're doing. And the clearer you can be about that why, the more you'll go out and do whatever it takes to achieve that. In businesses, we encounter barriers everywhere we look, right? And there's this barrier, this barrier, this barrier. You got to learn this new thing. As long as you're in touch with your why, you're going to achieve it. You'll get there. So that's my takeaway. Yeah. Any last things to add? Yeah, go ahead, Marco.
One last thing. Today was a very special day. So one of the associates I work with closely, like you, actually has a client that's selling a business where there's a windfall. So there's a $70 million offer on the table to buy the business. Wow. And I'll be honest with you, I don't run into that many that are that size. So my sweet spot tends to be 5 million to 25. So very interesting thing. I've been working closely with an attorney. This attorney has been doing trusts since 1991. We introduced an attorney to the sellers today, and the attorney has figured out a way to not only alleviate the capital gains tax legally through the tax code, but also create a charitable family foundation that's going to do a lot of good in this world, and help the family unlock some of the income while they're alive from the charity, 99% tax-free for their benefactors. And when these folks die, a life insurance that we will be putting into place will replace the entire amount, $70 million. So,
Wow.
yeah. And the one weird thing about getting a $70 million life insurance policy is that it's going to take 3 or 4 companies. That's, yeah, there's not one company to write a $70 million life insurance policy. That's an interesting little tidbit out there. So,
Yeah.
but yeah. So,
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Congrats.
And, yeah,
absolutely.
congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Well,
And I don't own that method. It's trademarked. I wish I owned it. I'll tell you that. But the gentleman that owns it. That's why I had Newport Beach out of my mind. There's an attorney that if anyone on your show has a sale of a business and they want to explore that, I can connect them with this attorney who's very talented. The name of the trust is called the Ideal Plan, and I can help them and guide them from the financial perspective of it. So
Very good.
Yeah, appreciate it. And thank you, Coach Jon, for joining us. Marco, always a pleasure. Thank you for
always a pleasure. Thank you very
nice
much.
To meet
Jon.
you, Marco.
Very good. Nice to meet you, Jon. Looking forward to catching this podcast. And you can always catch me, Marcus Aurelius, at specialsaucepodcast.com. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.